This video is going to be me and Karl interviewing Yoni, the man behind the beard. Hope you enjoy, and don't forget to like and subscribe. So, if you've tuned into any of our videos before today, you may have seen our interview with Karl. Today's our interview with Yoni. Boys, first of all, how are you doing?
Good, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
we're
good.
recording this at 11 p.m. on a Thursday, so looking forward to the weekend.
We've just finished recording the podcast, and it is 11 p.m. and we're all up early tomorrow. So I hope you enjoy, and I hope you appreciate the effort we're putting in to put this content out. But we wanted to come and interview Yoni today, just like we said in the intro, to get to know Yoni on a personal level. Obviously, we've all got our profiles online and we know what our message is online in terms of our artwork, but I think it'd just be interesting for us to get to know you as a person, Yoni.
I think Yoni's quite an interesting character, and
yeah, he is.
You're the adult of this group for sure, and you keep us in check. So I've always just been kind of interested to sort of where did you grow up and sort of what was it like for you as a kid?
Yeah, sure. It's obviously a subject I know a lot about. I grew up in North Manchester, in Bury, is where I was born. Growing up, I actually really loved school. Always did really well. As I got towards like the end of high school, I suppose, I started to really be interested in film and media. I'd done some like little experimentations in art during high school, and had fallen in love with comic book films and comic books as a medium, and so that was kind of my first foray into creativity, really. So I started doing some basic graphic design stuff and filmmaking at college, and alongside that was also trying to teach myself how to be a comic book illustrator. I was never the best person at drawing at school. I was always good at like still life stuff. I could always do that pretty well, and I've always been really good at replication, so seeing something and then creating it, whether it's a photograph, something in front of me, other artwork or whatever. I've always been pretty good at that kind of thing, and I've always had a really good eye for graphic design, but never, I suppose at first, didn't really ever see it as a viable career path. So my mum was, before she retired, was a lecturer at a university. She used to teach law, and my dad was a trained solicitor, so that was something I always really saw myself going into. So as a kid, I don't think there's many kids who are like, yeah, I'm going to be a solicitor, but I was that kid. Very much believed that was going to be the career path that I took, and then for various reasons I just wound up not being as passionate about that subject as I thought I would when I was studying it, and then went to university in Manchester to begin with, doing film studies and graphic design as a combined course, but really hated the course. So wound up changing universities and going to Staffordshire University, but just studying film production. So very much focusing on film at that point, and the design work and the artwork really took a backseat. Came out of university, got work experience at a production company in Manchester. Then they gave me a job just as like the office runner. That was my job for like 2 years, and then eventually became a director. So a lot of people on Twitter probably just know me, and all social media probably just know me as an illustrator and an artist, but like my other day job is that I make TV commercials and brand films. And then obviously the pandemic hit, Liverpool won the league, and I was like, I need to express this somehow. Opened up Procreate on my iPad and started working on a piece of art, that just because I wanted something on my wall to mark that we'd finally seen Liverpool win the league again in my lifetime. That just kind of snowballed. Obviously the pandemic was a total world-changing event, so wound up giving me the opportunity to actually focus on that and see if I could develop myself and get back into that headspace, having not really pursued it much since college. And then here I am now.
Good podcast. Thanks, Yoni. Pretty much covered it all there. No, I think it's interesting that you mentioned there's quite a bit of stuff there to unpack. But one of the things that you mentioned for me, and we'll probably go off on a few tangents like we did in Karl's one, but this links back to something Karl said, and it's something that I identified with straight away, is that when you studied artwork in college, I think you said initially, you were doing bags and things like that, and you didn't have the creativity given to you to learn what you wanted to learn, or should we say develop what you wanted to develop. And the reason I identify with that is because, like what Karl said, you obviously stuck at it, Yoni. Like what Karl said, I actually dropped artwork in first year of college at the end, because I remember doing a subject that was fabrics and folds, and I was being told to draw a pile of washing, and the folds in it, and I was like, I want to draw a pile of, and I dropped it. And is that something that you think, I know you stuck it out, but is that something you think should change in like the education of artists? Because we don't think art is a profession until we leave, really. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How's that affected your view of it?
It's weird because like I've just like related a similar story. We've all got similar experiences of feeling like education didn't necessarily like meet our creativity. Like it felt like it fell short of what we wanted to try and do. And I think that feels like it's a somewhat universal thing where like it tries to pigeonhole you. But I'd be really interested to know what it's like now, because I think, coming back to something that we've spoken about before, the opportunities for illustrators, artists, designers at the start of the 21st century was so much more limited than they are now. So I'd be really interested to know if those limitations like still exist in the education system for people that are 14, 15, 16, 17 going through it now, or if people are actually understanding that given the access to technology that everybody has now, like you should just be able to kind of just find your own path, like see what you want to do, see what kind of work you want to create. I think that's definitely something that it almost means that me now in 2021 can't relate to the experiences of me in 2002 or whatever. But now, like, kids can literally have an iPad in their hand from the age of probably like 5.
Younger.
Procreate's a tenner. Yeah, kids of all ages are getting given this technology, and they're growing up with it, and they're learning it like water. It's that intrinsic to their life. Be really interested to know how somebody now feels about it, because I just think our relationship to creativity and to art 20 years ago, it kind of just means nothing in the landscape of what exists now.
Yeah. I don't know whether you've got a question there, Karl, but I've got a pretty good one in a sec if you do first.
Yeah, I do actually. I wanted to kind of go a little bit back to the beginning again. I was just wondered was there a moment in your life or an inspiration that made you sort of realise, I want to illustrate. I know you've got, you do the director stuff and you've got the film stuff, but I just wondered, apart from the point of where you got to the pandemic and Liverpool winning the league, was there a moment prior to that when you were younger that you realised that, or an inspiration or something that sort of sparked your interest in being an illustrator as such?
I think it really just like there's a couple of moments I could talk about in terms of like my love of design overall, but in terms of like illustration, I think it goes back to like my love, like I said, my love of comic books, and that medium. Like, I've been obsessed with comics since I was a young kid. Always been absolutely in love with all sorts of different Batman graphic novels, and all of the different styles of art that were in there. And I think that was the moment where I realized, because like I said, in terms of like freehand drawing and just being able to sit down and structurally create like a head and a face, it wasn't necessarily always my forte, and there were people around me that were much better at it than me. And I think at a school level and like an early college level, that kind of scared me, because my goal, like, I know that I'm sure a lot of people agree with this, and everybody feels this to a certain extent. My goal when I set out to do something is I want to do the best version of that thing. If I'm going to be a thing, I want to be one of the best people doing that thing. So to be surrounded by people who have what most people would say were the greater skill and the more talent, just kind of scared me. But then when I got into comic books, and you see artists and amazing creators like Frank Miller, like Frank Quietly, and then there's obviously like the like traditional incredible artists like Jim Lee, but then there's artists like Tim Sale who have a vastly different style, and they're not the kind of person who you'd put down their artwork in front of people and they'd go, oh yeah, that's traditionally aesthetically pleasing, but it tells an amazing story, it's evocative, and it captures you. And so seeing that kind of diverse set of styles within a huge part of popular culture was the moment where I kind of went, oh, you know what, like, I can pursue this in some shape or form. There is a space for different skill sets and different styles and different levels of talent within the world. You know, I can put my mind to it and do this.
Yeah. Similar to, I can see that comic book style in your work. I can still see it. You can see the influence running through, especially with the rips. The rips sort of, if you haven't seen Yoni's work, I'm assuming you have. But if you haven't, go to his Instagram page. I think it's just Art by Yoni. We can put it in the link below in the description. But the rips that you get going through it, that sort of separate the different chapters of the piece that you're doing, that's very reminiscent of that comic book era, if you like. Do you recognise that in your own work now? And do you try and achieve that now, or is it just a byproduct?
I think to a certain extent I do. Like, one of the things that I continue to maintain is like my outline work. So like, I know a lot of fantastic artists. So like, I always think of Dan Layden, for example, is amazing at like retaining structure, but he takes away a lot of his line work, and it's so clean and it's really cool. But it's something I've always kept in there because that is like my direct lineage back to comic book artwork. You know, the line work is obviously like the fundamental building block when it comes to comics. And in terms of like the stuff that I've done with rips, or even like other artwork of mine that I've done, I often try and get it to have a bit of a like an analog physical feel. So like that's one of the reasons why, like with my Liverpool print or with the player prints that I do, I go with those rips, is because I want it to still, I want you to look at it from across the room when it's up on your wall, and I want you to feel like there it is. Yeah, exactly. I want you to be able to like feel like it has a real tangible physicality to it. Like, it wasn't just created on my iPad and then put into Photoshop and then digitally printed, but that there's something really tangible in there. So and I think that does come back to the feeling of a comic book in your hand, that kind of thing. You know, it's something there that you're holding that I'm trying to always kind of keep in mind.
I do agree that your artwork and the style, especially sort of the structure of the background and the colours and the shading, it is very comic book like. I think back to one you did of Jordan Henderson. I think he's holding the European Cup, if I'm right, and it's like a deep red. And you know, even if you were to a certain extent change that image and, you know, like change the colour slightly darker and put a Batman on it, I could get that vibe, do you know what I mean, from it. And and I think I can see now that you've kind of explained your background and you sort of where you were as a youngster. Yeah, I can really see how it sort of comes through.
If you got offered the opportunity to work on a comic book as a full-time illustrator, give up what you're doing now with your shop and this YouTube channel and your full-time job, would you take it?
It's not going anywhere.
I think the honest answer is no.
Really? So
Yeah,
if a Batman series comic,
He knows we couldn't run this by ourselves.
Come on, Yoni. This is Marvel. This is always what you've always wanted.
It's DC,
what
actually.
You do with Batman series.
I know. Yeah, I think we've we've got to clarify for our audience here that Batman is DC.
Oh, apologies. I'll probably get cancelled online by the comic book freaks for that book. If DC was like, come on,
you probably weren't going to get cancelled until you decided to call out the comic book freaks. Fucking hell.
Listen, I'm a freak about loads of stuff. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, we already know if you haven't seen the last podcast.
If you don't know about Callie's freak nature, just go and watch some of our other videos. You'll find that pretty cool.
Wait until you interview me. But seriously though, would I know you'd consider it long and hard, but
You know
what would it take for you to say yes to that if you wouldn't initially?
I'd need to practice being a comic book illustrator for about a
Really?
decade. That's the honest truth. That's the reason why I'd say no, and it's because like one of the things that my dad said to me when I was really young, I don't even remember the specific instance, is it's just like, if you're going to do something, do it well and do it properly. And I don't like, regardless of like what anybody thinks of my qualities as an illustrator, like producing a comic book and producing like a series of images that tell a story is a whole fucking other ball game. As well as producing 30 pages in a month, in less than a month.
One of the things that I mentioned this in the IG live that we done, is that you always approach projects with caution until you really understand the reason behind it. Have you always done that? Is that something you've done in every area of your life? Like, there's always got to be a real driving force that you identify with before you seem to jump on a project. Is that native, or is that just something that you picked up in later life?
I think, like with a lot of creative kind of people and people that are trying to build that kind of career, at the start of my career, I would say yes to anything. You know, somebody could have asked me to draw an ad for an escort service that was going to go in the back of a phone box, and I'd been
That
like,
you?
It wasn't actually. Somebody else got the work.
The number was wrong.
But like, I'd have turned around to that brief and gone, oh, you know what? I've dreamt of doing this my whole life. I'm so glad that you've offered me the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Here's an amazing piece of work, and I think that's great. I think, you know, as a person coming up, you should grab every opportunity and try and make as much of it as you can. And then as I've kind of been able to establish myself a little bit more, then I like to work on things that I feel like I can bring something to. I think that's always the biggest thing for me, whether it's a brief for a piece of film work or an illustration. I like to look at the brief, I like to sit with it, and I like to think, okay, I've got at least one part of one idea that I don't think anybody else is going to have on this. I can make it my own.
What do you want people to see when they see your work online?
That's such an interesting question.
It is. I'm an interesting guy, Yoni.
Interesting is one way of putting it.
For sure.
I think one thing that I'd like people to see when they look at my artwork online is commitment. Like, that I am committed to delivering high standards, like on whatever it is that I'm working on. I think that's one of the most important things to me, is like, I like people to know that I put a lot into stuff. I like people to appreciate that. It's something that has always meant a lot to me, no matter what I'm doing, to be honest with you, whether it's like planning a birthday party for a mate, or it's creating a piece of artwork, or anything like that. I like people to know that I'm putting all of myself into this. How
do you deal with negative comments towards your artwork? I mean, yeah, how do you deal with it? Not well.
Text our group.
Yeah, that's true. Screenshot.
I don't deal with it well at all. No, I try not to take it too personally. I'm fortunate enough that in my career so far, I've not had a lot of negativity thrown my way. You know, we've all had some, because the internet is a very toxic place at the best of times. Mm-hmm. But I think, like, I try and remind myself of this, and like, you know, I'm like a lot of people, I'm really good at giving advice. I'm not always that great at taking my own advice, but I try and remember that if I'm gonna take a negative comment really seriously, then I need to take the good comments really seriously as well. Yeah. You know, I have to accept that they weigh just as much, they matter just as much. So if I'm gonna do that, then yeah, that has to be in equal measure. But I think it depends on what kind of negativity we're talking about. Like, I am all for somebody messaging me and saying, hey man, here's how I thought you could have made this piece better. Then cool. Like, you know, if I respect their opinion and I value their opinion, I'll take that on board and I'll use it to improve. if it's just somebody trolling, then they can get to fucking. I couldn't give less of a shit.
Yeah, it's
What is it about those negative comments though that get you?
No matter what piece of work it is, like you've put a lot of your time and effort into that, and you're not just considering the time and effort to create the thing. You got to think about the thousands of hours you've put to get there and be able to create that thing, and then in 5 seconds somebody goes, yeah, but it mate.
Someone who's never picked up
Yeah.
a head in their life.
Like what? Like the initial response is always like, what right do you have to judge me for even a moment?
Yeah.
But then you have to quickly move on to like, well, one, yeah, they kind of have every right because I'm putting it out there, so I should accept that it's going to happen. And then two, like, what does it matter? They're not your audience. Move on.
You shouldn't react if you don't like something. Then you just leave it, or you don't like it, or you
follow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Coming back to something that you both said is like one of the first things I'll do is screenshot it and send it to you two, so that you can tell me that they're wrong. But like that's an important thing as well. Like if you're getting negative comments on your work and it's making you feel bad, like find a mate, send them it, and go look at this.
Yeah.
And the first thing they'll do is turn around and go, yeah, but you're awesome. Who cares? And then you'll probably feel a bit better. But like, I think it comes back to like my own personal like mantra when it comes to social media, and you guys might not necessarily be the audience for this reference I'm about to make, but referencing what I think is the second best Star Wars film, The Last Jedi, and I don't care what anybody watching this thinks and whether they agree with me. There's a bit at the end where Kelly Marie Tran's character Rose says that you shouldn't spend time trying to destroy what you hate. You should spend it trying to save what you love. And I think like that's how I feel about social media. Like, don't go out of your way to just find stuff you don't like and tell them that you don't like it. Find stuff you do like and tell them how awesome they are.
Yeah, totally agree with you.
100%. Has it ever affected you in the way that it's prevented you from posting anything? Has it ever made you scared of putting stuff out there?
Yeah. So like, not exactly, but kind of. So I'll tell a specific story. So I don't know, like you guys might not know this story. I don't think I've told it to either of you. So like that Gerard print behind you, with the rips in it, with all the different, with all the different kits from his Liverpool career in there. It's like I first posted a piece of that. It was Cristiano Ronaldo. I think he just scored like maybe his 600th goal or something, and it was a big to do on social media. So I'd created this piece to celebrate it, and like at the time, I was like, I've come up with this awesome style. Like I have originated this fantastic idea. It was based off of there's a artist who does a lot of comic book posters called Mike Mitchell, and he does this series of prints where he these just social media posts where he rips up different prints of his. Just one sec, guys. I'm just checking that I've got the name of the illustrator right before I carry on. Yeah, so there's an artist called Mike Mitchell, and he takes old prints of his. So like he'll do a portrait of Wolverine, and then a character from Star Wars, or Jack Nicholson from The Shining. He'll rip the two up, and he'll just put the top of the head on top of the bottom of the head. And I thought that was really cool, and I saw that, and I was like, that could be a really cool way to show footballers through the years. And then there's an amazing artist online called Mark Johnson, who I've gotten to know over the past year or so. And somebody commented on, I think it was Ant Diverse Pixels commented saying like, oh, it reminds me of Mark Johnson's work. And truth is, I'd probably seen Mark's work at some point in my life, but like I wasn't really a football illustrator until last year, so certainly hadn't been super familiar with it. And I was like, oh, it is exactly like Mark's work. That's now caused me this huge ball of anxiety because inadvertently I now feel like I've just ripped someone off.
Is that a pun?
Yeah, it's a good pun actually.
Didn't mean it.
So I immediately reached out to Mark and I was like, hey man, like this thing's just happened. I'm really sorry. Didn't mean to do it at all. Wasn't that familiar with your work like this. But like totally understand if it's f***ed you off, and if you want me to like take it down or whatever, let me know. And he replied immediately just being like, nah man, don't worry about it. Like it's cool. You carry on doing what you're doing. So like at that moment I was like cool, because like I was excited about this idea, and as you guys can tell, I've continued to do a series of it. But then there was one guy who I have no idea who he was. Didn't follow me on Twitter, but just started like spamming me like I was some sort of rip-off merchant. Again, another good pun. But like properly like trying to tear me a new one basically. And
Yoni. As if you're not trying to put these puns in on purpose now.
I'm really not. I'm
tried to tear me a new one. He nearly folded my emotions in half.
Shredded me apart.
I'm too worked up by this story. I'll try and avoid them from now on though. But it's like, yeah, he was giving me proper dogs abuse on Twitter. Like over the series of like a week, whenever I'd post something, he'd be straight in the comments being like, oh, he's at it again. And I like, you know, with nothing, like I posted some of Shannon's artwork and he tried to like say I'd ripped someone off. And I was like, mate, this is just my mate's stuff that I put in a frame because I wanted to post it on social media. And so that got to me for a while. And I did like, there was a good few weeks, to be honest with you, where I just sat with it and I was just like feeling guilty, a little bit ashamed, even though I'd had a conversation with Mark, who first did this style, and he was cool with it. And I know that that's not where me starting to do with it came from. I didn't try and steal anybody else's concept at all, but it just, you know, things happen because we're all exposed to similar media and all that kind of stuff. We all have the same influences. So that affected me for a while, and I'd say that was the closest I've come to feeling like I shouldn't create something because of what someone else thought. I
think one thing I like to sort of mention is that feedback to anyone who's trying to do something different, you've got to be really careful. Unless you're just trolling, you know, you get the trolls, but something so small can discourage you so much that you could stop working on what you want to do.
Yeah.
And it, like, your trajectory as an artist or whatever it is, it can be derailed by the smallest of comments. And sometimes it even goes into, like, you know, some of the things that people know you can say as well. Like, I'm very careful on, you know, if I say something to someone that makes them feel silly about putting a certain type of content out there, even if they look a bit daft doing it, I don't criticise them for it, because that could be the moment that they go, oh, I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
Then,
yeah,
you know, and it can stop someone becoming really successful. That you don't know the knock-on effect of it. So that's sort of just why I wanted to ask you that question, to see if it
can have the inverse effect as well. Not just like stop them from doing something, but it can like properly negatively drag them back.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can put somebody into some sort of proper spiral. I think there's a couple of things that I just want to say on that. Is like, the first one is like, don't give feedback unless someone's asked for it. If somebody posts their artwork on Twitter, regardless of what you think, unless their tweet or Instagram or wherever it is, unless it specifically says, what do you guys think? And even then, they don't really mean what do you guys think. They mean tell me you like it. But unless it specifically is asking for feedback, don't give any. It's not your place. It's not been asked for by the creator. And the other thing is, like, try and give feedback from their perspective. I know that's a weird thing to say because you can't be someone else, but like, if I asked you for feedback on a piece, Callie, I wouldn't expect you to say, well, it should be far more abstract, it should be far more impressionistic, and it should be far more colourful, because that would be how to make it your piece.
Yeah.
But like, you need to try and understand what are their goals, what are they trying to do with it, and just if you're going to guide them to get to their point of success, not your own.
At the end of the day, you know, people giving feedback is it's more about, it's a question of whether you, just because you don't like it doesn't mean that the feedback is, you know, that it's not good or you could do this better.
Yeah.
It just means that you're just not, you know, you don't like it, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
But even if one person looks at someone's artwork and thinks to make a negative comment, and if you can stop one person doing that, then
you have to be considerate. I just think you have to be considerate because everybody's different. You know, like, again, you know, as I was saying before, we've got a lot of followers. All of us have got a lot of followers now, and you know, over the years we've probably had a few comments, and you get thick skin. But you know, if somebody else is starting up and you know they haven't got that thick skin, you know, what you say, you just need to be careful what you say, just because everybody might take it differently. And like you said, you know, people might not. It might be the end of their career or the end of whatever they're doing just because of one comment, because that can easily happen. And I think you just need to be consider it and think about what you're saying when you and the way you conduct yourself online.
An interesting question, just to try and get to know you a bit more, Yoni, is I sort of not judge people, but I sort of seem like I think I know a lot about someone by who their heroes are and who their heroes were. Like you said with the question about peeing in the shower with Karl. Who was your hero as a kid or inspiration as a kid, and who is it now?
Wow. As a kid, it was definitely... Okay, so 3, actually. So my dad, first and foremost, definitely was my hero, continues to be one of my best friends. So definitely my dad. Definitely also Patrick Berger, which is weird because of Karl's story in his episode. But I just I idolised his hair more than anything else. I just didn't
Did have fantastic hair.
Oh, he really did, and I couldn't even comprehend how you could have hair like that. So I think it was probably those two as a kid. Who's my hero now? I don't know. I don't know if I've thought about that kind of thing for in that kind of.
I suppose it's framed differently now, isn't it? It's not necessarily a hero, but do you have a someone who you in your life that stands out where you go, do you know what, he's doing it right, or she's doing it right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's alright, you can say me, it's fine, it's no problem.
One of the people I look up to in my life is not a person, but it's my dog Casper, because he just has no cares in the world. He's got no responsibilities. He has nothing that he needs to worry about. He just sleeps all day, and it's amazing. And then the other side of it is I really respect people who can leave their work at the office. It's something I really struggle with. I think it's a really healthy way to be, but it's something I've never been able to do. So I've got lots of friends who have jobs of all types, and they get home, they switch into family mode or relaxation mode, or it's the weekend and they just enjoy their time with friends. And I really have never been able to do that. I can't make the most of a Saturday evening with mates because I'm kind of always just thinking oh, what do I need to do tomorrow? What could I have been accomplishing tonight? So I have a real admiration for people who can actually properly enjoy their life.
People text me sometimes from the office and stuff, because I've still got obviously a full-time job. People text me on a Saturday. I just will not respond until the Monday morning.
That's the right way to
Nor
do it,
should
though.
you.
That's the right way to do it.
Yeah, it will not even enter my mind for a second to do anything work related.
If I was in a position of power in government or in any country in the world, I would make it that receiving calls, texts and emails outside of work hours should count as overtime. Not replying to them, but just receiving them. Because you get that text on your phone from someone at the office, whether it's 5 minutes or whatever, you don't reply, but you have to go into work mode. And it's so it's unfair, it's unreasonable, shouldn't be allowed to do it.
Yeah, it's quite funny you say that. When I used to work for the council, they at one point they wanted to give us mobile phones, and I was like, listen, I work in the office. If you can't ring me in the office, if you're trying to ring me on my phone, it means I'm not working, so I won't be answering the phone. What's the point?
The truth is, people, if you can't get me on Skype, if you can't get me on Teams, if you can't get me on an email, if you can't get me on my work phone, you can't get me on my department, then you're not getting me. Do you know what I mean? I'm busy, and it's just you've got to have that separation. So it's good advice to follow. What's the best piece of advice you've ever had, personally and professionally?
So I think something I said before that my dad said to me when I was a lot younger, he said, if you're going to do something, do it well and do it properly. And I've always believed in that. I think if you're going to turn your attention to something because you want to be successful in that thing, then you should be committed to doing it properly and making the effort and putting in the work to do that. There are almost never shortcuts in life. So I think if you're going to start your journey out, whether it's professional, as a hobby, creatively, not creatively, whatever, if the first part of your journey is looking for shortcuts, then you're wasting your time even starting.
I'd probably second that.
You've, like you said, you've only been a football illustrator for a few years now, really. What would be your advice to someone who wants to get from zero to where you are in 2 years?
Grow a beard.
As the three of us can say, like, having a beard is what leads to instant success. So yeah, I like, a lot of people ask me that kind of thing because I think to a lot of people, because I only posted my first proper piece of illustrated artwork in September last year, so like within 12 months it feels as though I've developed like quite the reputation. The truth is I've been doing it for 20 years. I got my first I've been studying. I first studied art in school. I got my first Mac with Photoshop on it when I was 12 years old, and I'm 33 now, so I've been doing it over 20 years. So like, despite what you might think because of when you started following me on Twitter, this is not an overnight success. I am not an overnight success. Don't expect to be an overnight success. I think a lot of people look at people on Twitter and go, "Why is that not me right now?" You know, the road is long and hard, and it should be, like, because being a successful artist, being successful in a creative field means that you've got all this freedom and you are living a life that few people get to experience. It's going to be hard work. You know, learn to love that side of it as well.
It's a good answer, and it's the right answer. You know, like you said, you can't just be successful overnight. It takes a long, hard road, and there's going to be ups and downs. And as long as you stick with it, you'll reap the rewards eventually.
And you never get there.
You're never going to be satisfied. So, like, you know, you hit those goals, and the second you hit them, they're in the past, and that's the right way to feel about it. If I can quote my something that my good friend Trent Alexander-Arnold said to him when I was filming with him last year. Sorry. I'll just let the sound of that name drop reverberate for a moment.
He said, Trent Alexander-Arnold.
He said, do you know that Karl Thyer on Twitter?
And I went, shut the fuck up. So I was interviewing him for a film that I made, and like, this is actually something he said really did stick with me. So I said to him, like, I think it was in November of last year, so the league win was pretty fresh in the memory, and despite what happened for the rest of last season, in November we were actually flying. Like, you know, I think we were definitely still top of the league at that point. And so I asked him, like, how it felt to be part of a team that had just won the league, the European Cup, the Club World Cup, the Super Cup, and he just said, he was like, the victories and like the success last 5 minutes, but the defeats are what you hold with you and you use to push yourself on. And I think, like, that's a really important thing to always bear in mind, is like, you're never going to enjoy the victories and the things that you achieve as much as you think you will.
Yeah.
And you know, just move past them and then move on to the next thing. Look at the next goal. As soon as you've achieved something, it's the past.
Yeah.
It's history.
Obviously, we've had a good conversation with Yoni there. Had some good insights into who he actually is. And we sort of ended the last podcast with Karl with a bit of a segment of what would you prefer out of X or Y. Quick fire questions. So Yoni, we're going to do the same for you. No deliberating, no input from Karl. Just want your honest opinion on what you'd prefer out of these things, and then we're going to judge you severely after it.
I'm ready to be judged.
You ready?
Yeah.
Sad. Here we go. Nike or Adidas?
Nike.
Mac or PC?
Mac.
Photoshop or Illustrator?
Photoshop.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Scone or scone?
Scone.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Good choice. Simpsons or Family Guy?
Simpsons.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs and cats. I love you both.
Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
Pepsi or Pepsi Max?
Pepsi Max.
Pepsi Max, good choice. Is the book better or is the movie?
The book.
Beer or wine?
Beer.
You're a man of my own. Night in or night out?
Night in.
If I'd have asked you that 10 years ago, what would you have said?
Night out. If you'd have asked me 10 minutes ago, it might have been night out. But it's gone midnight now.
Good point. This one's gonna be good for you, Yoni. Ninjas or pirates?
Ninjas.
Okay.
Especially if they're turtles.
Ninja turtles. Do you remember the sharks with rollerblades?
What
Street Sharks? Remember them?
What?
It was the same time as Ninja Turtles. It was like a
Sounds like
TV
a terrible knockoff.
Yeah.
It was a TV program when we were kids in the 90s,
Did you
and it was
say
called Street Sharks.
with rollerblades?
Yeah, called Street Sharks.
Yeah.
And they had figurines of them. Don't you remember them?
Guys, if anybody watching this remembers Street Sharks, please let us know in the comments, because I think Callie's made this up.
I'm telling you now, people remember Street Sharks. We'll see in the comments when it comes up.
I've got a bonus one for Yoni. Seeing as we're Liverpool fans, who had the better left foot, John Arnorisa or Patrick Berger?
John Arnorisa.
Ooh, that is controversial, that.
Very controversial.
John Arnorisa could hit the moon from Anfield.
Yeah, that is true. To bring the episode to a close, I enjoy getting to know Yoni there. I think that it's interesting to know the person, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than just the facade that we've all got online.
It's nice to know somebody's where they came from and how they grew up and stuff, because you can relate to it, because we're all kind of effectively very similar backgrounds in a way. Do you know what I mean? And it's nice when you just hear someone else's story rather than just you obviously just know your own, but hearing other people's stories always good, especially when it's people you get on with.
100%.
Yeah, long may it continue.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for watching my interview, guys. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the Untitled Artwork YouTube channel.
That was good.
Great.